Yes, obviously, it's very wrong for a man to be blue-balled by an entire union of Soviet socialist republics. Yeah, it's worse that the man's Indian, man. I mean, oh hey, hi. I didn't see you there. Probably because this is audio only, and I don't have CCTV cameras installed in your houses yet. Well, this is our Yoon, the As If It Are Name podcast, and here we talk about India and Indians and horrible things done to India or done by Indians and every combination, permutation, mutation, and other stations of the same. The last time we left off, we were talking about Svetlana Stalin, who is obviously the daughter of Adolf Hitler. Well, if you believe that, please don't listen to this anymore. She was the daughter of Joseph Stalin. Last time we talked about how Svetlana's life was in general shaped by the legacy her father left behind, or at the direct whims of her father. We learned about how she was not free to make personal choices to a certain extent, and by personal choices I mean she was not very free to choose who she loved, and how one Indian man eventually changed her perception of what love could be. The Indian we are talking about here is Brijesh Singh, who met Svetlana somewhere in 1965, and the two of them just got along so well that Svetlana's children from previous marriages, who were teenagers by the point, were fond of Brijesh Singh, an Indian man. Like these Russian children, the grandchildren of Stalin, were just chill with this Indian man hanging around, and they were at a point where they did want to get married, which the couple just assumed would be a very simple task, because you see, Brijesh was a long-time communist, so the couple assumed that two more workers of the world uniting in marriage would not be something the state found issue with. But they did. The couple even expected Singh's position as the prince of a defunct royal house in Pratapgarh, like that would certainly help elevate his status enough to be worthy of spending his life with the daughter of Joseph Stalin, but it didn't. You see, the issue was that Singh wasn't what you would call a very well-liked communist. That is, his mentor M.N. Roy had been earlier ousted from the Comintern on the orders of Joseph Stalin himself. This was during the Trotsky's purge. So when Roy himself was in Mexico, just like Trotsky, I don't think they were at the same time, but fun fact, the Mexican Communist Party was founded by M.N. Roy. So a Bengali is the reason Mexico has a Communist Party, or I think a left movement in general. So cheers. Brijesh also held beliefs that were not quite in vogue just half a decade after the Cuban Revolution. That is because Singh saw communism as a means to achieve a global world order based on the virtue of brotherhood and justice. Two ideas the existence of which can be severely hampered by armed conflicts. Quote, he did not want to shed blood in order to attain an ideal, nor could he have ever done so. He believed in reforms and in peaceful democratic struggles. Wrote Svetlana, recalling her understanding of what communism meant to Singh without, having been familiarized with Marxist theories in general. That is because you have to understand a lot of Indians who are communists during this time are pamphlet communists, as in they might have read theory but most of them haven't. That is because they might be literate, but the access to education, the access to knowledge is not as easy as it is today. That's around the time when the HSRA and other leftist organizations like that, who had read theory, started writing pamphlets, giving out pamphlets that tried to put out Marxism through a Desi lens. And you have to understand, for someone who has been living his entire life under people who come from a land 13,000 kilometers away on ships and then loot everything you see around you, for that man, an ideology that promises that every resource he sees around him will be for everyone that he sees around him. And that's amazing to think about, and which is why we had a severe flood of pamphlet communists. Now, I'm not saying that Brijesh himself was a pamphlet communist, because obviously he was a very well-read man. He was a writer in Moscow, so obviously you have to have some credits, and that's that. Now, this was during the post-Khrushchev era, so where Leonid Brezhnev sought to strengthen the Union by bringing back a lot of attitudes from Stalinist time. Things that worked when you're trying to run a totalitarian state. This included a clampdown on freedom of expression, dissent, and a rejuvenation of the image that was Stalin, as in he was put back up on a pedestal to be worshipped. It was in this period that Svetlana wanted to have an interracial marriage, something the Kremlin of the day would never stand for. She was asked not to chase after weakly Indian, instead tie a knot to strong Russian man. More precisely, what the then PM of Russia said to her was that, what have you cook? I'll just do it in normal English. Quote, "What have you cooked up? You, a young, healthy woman, a sportswoman? Couldn't you have found someone here? I mean, someone young and strong? What do you want with this old, sick Hindu? No, we are all against it. Positively against it." And this is where Svetlana's hope of living a life in the Union just dissipated. They wished to move back to India, but when it became clear that the Politburo would never allow that, they just decided to make their life in Moscow as husband and wife in all but name and legal verification. Sadly, that wouldn't be long. A year after Singh returned to Moscow, that's around 1966, he fell back into another serious bout of illness, which he was unable to beat this time. So, this is where we stand in 1967 as Svetlana loses her happy ever after with another person she deeply loved, all due to her father's name and legacy dictating her life choices a decade after his death. Singh's body was cremated in Moscow and Svetlana really wanted to honor his memory. For this, she tried to get a permit and travel to India, where she intended to spread his ashes in the Ganga or the Ganges if you're fancy. The Soviet administration obviously tried their best to dissuade her from taking these steps, and later evidence revealed that this effort to dissuade her from continuing this trip included then Prime Minister Alexei Kosygin. The main reason they wanted to stop her from going to India, and this is why white people are insufferable due to their stupidity, they wholeheartedly believe that Svetlana being burnt alive with the body of Brijesh Singh was a possibility. Like, yes, they were actually worried about Joseph Stalin's daughter falling victim to Sati. In 1967, like obviously the last instance of Sati was somewhere recorded in the 1980s. But these were isolated incidents. Like, I don't think that was a widespread practice since the first train started rolling along the subcontinent. More importantly, what funeral pyre would she jump into? She's holding on to his ashes already. Like, she's not taking Brijesh's entire body down to India and having one of those Viking Game of Thrones funerals, is she? Like, what is wrong with you people? Anyways, after much hibbity hoopla, she gets a permit to go on a first ever foreign trip. She lands in India in early 1967 and is straight away headed to Kalankar, where Singh's ancestral home was situated. She watched from the banks of the Ganga as Singh's brothers spread his ashes across the river because, patriarchy, religion, what else do you expect? But it was in India that Svetlana felt free for the first time. Like, obviously, she had a squad of bodyguards, but not much media attention was given to her arrival in India itself, since politically, the nation was in turmoil, with Indira Gandhi trying her best to maintain a grasp on a very shaky government, mostly due to infighting within her own party. Svetlana travelled in crowded general class trains, visited the locals along the banks of the Ganga, and talked to Indians about Gandhi and Nehru, two people that she had deep admiration for all her life. And that is despite her father personally disliking the two leaders who he considered British capitalist stooges. So I guess Sangees and Stalin see eye to eye on one thing, like they both hate Gandhi and Nehru. But, well, halfway, because I think Stalin's main issue with Gandhi and Nehru was that they weren't willing to kill every upper class and upper caste landowner that existed in 1947, which is, I don't think that Sangees would stand for that, would they? Like, Stalin stays winning. I shouldn't have said that. It was during this trip that she finally had her first thought of seeking asylum outside the USSR. And for this, she tried to spend the rest of her life in India, asking the Soviet ambassador in Delhi to grant her permission to do the same. This was, as anyone who has been listening till now has guessed, rejected, with Svetlana being asked to return to the Soviet Union at the latest. She did not give up though. Remember, Brijesh was from a family of aristocrats, so he had connections. In this case, his brother Dinesh Singh was among the closest confidants of Indira Gandhi, the then Prime Minister of India. However, this is 1967 and Indira was going through a crisis of her own, since she had to yet consolidate her hold over the Congress party that had noticeably split among the old guard, who had Nehru's ideals and other Congress-led ideals to shape their identity, and the new guard loyal to Indira Gandhi and the blood that flowed in her veins, which is sadly how the Congress is till this day for some reason. Now, at such a time, taking a step to antagonize a world superpower that has constantly been an ally is not the kind of stupid decision making that made sure Indira would be called the Iron Lady of India just a few more years down the line. Now, when all official avenues seem to have closed down, Svetlana even approached Ram Manohar Lohia, one of Indira Gandhi's chief opponents at the time. While he could not prove much help with regard to influencing a foreign superpower, he did highlight Svetlana's presence in India through the speeches he gave, lauding the daughter of Joseph Stalin, being in India not in any official position but just as a civilian, here to say goodbye to her loved one. This is obviously a slight at Gandhi, who is also the daughter of a former head of state, noticeably not just existing as a simple civilian. To anyone who was not operating on a single brain cell, it was clear that the Soviets would have known by now that something was up, and none other than Svetlana would have known more about the ever-following eye of the Kremlin. It had been 3 months since she first applied for refuge in India, and while there had been no response from Delhi, despite her kind of being the sister-in-law to one of the PM's closest advisors, Svetlana's paranoia could not let her digest the fact that India would not alert one of its biggest allies on the world stage about their most famous citizen trying to flee from their clutches. It is because we have had a bad record with the same in the past, like even to this day, if I'm right, somewhere between 2019 and 2021, that Saudi, Dubai, RT, something, I don't know what people from that place are called, Bangladeshis. An Emirati princess was caught by Indian authorities in her attempt to escape from what I assume is a very oil money ridden and abusive husband, and we just sent her right back. We packed her up in the same place she came and we sent her right back, possibly to a life eternal hellhole, eternal beatings and some dungeon surrounded by gold. I just hope that the poor woman is safe somewhere and not being beat up every day. Be that as it may, after much deliberation, the drastic measure that Svetlana Aluliveya, the first and only daughter of Joseph Stalin, decided to take was not to seek refuge in India at all. Instead, she decided to run into the arms of a nation that for nearly 3 decades was the chief reason her countrymen worried for a Cold War going nuclear. Yes, Svetlana ran to the USA, most specifically the US Embassy in Delhi, and the shock on the face of the guards along with everyone as she revealed who she was would have been a sight to see. But unfortunately, not a part of this episode. Look up for yourself if you're interested in finding out the covert and high-risk journey undertaken by the CIA and Svetlana as a final push away from the union her father shaped. Well, not really. They just shoved her into an airplane that was heading to Rome and prayed that no one would notice, which kind of worked. So, great CIA ops, I guess. No sooner had she set foot on American soil, well, American tarmac, that she had been hounded by reporters who wanted to know all about her. She gave them answers guided by her new handlers and was finally able to pursue what her will commanded. She had left the children in the USSR though, which sucks. Bad parenting, but since they were adults by then and had families of their own, they should have been able to take care of themselves unless the state decided to interfere, which they didn't. She did have a daughter with an American man named Olga, and that woman currently lives somewhere on the western coast of the United States, is a blonde-haired gunslinging woman. I think there are pictures of her on the internet, so it's very fun. Throughout it all, what fascinates me the most is that the entire thing was ticked off love. Like, Svetlana would have never concocted a plan for escaping the city that she was born in and spent her entire adult life into that point had it not been for this one sweet little Indian commie who treated her right, like treated her for who she was and not who she came from. That was a problem in her life for her entire existence, that no one could treat her as human. Everyone had to treat her as the daughter of this semi-deified authoritarian leader. So that's a tough existence, and you have to imagine how wrong all of this could have been. Like, these two people falling in love could have changed world history forever, because this is 1967. Just imagine a world where India has a more prominent role in smuggling Svetlana out of Soviet grasps. What does that lead to in 1971, when Russia is the only bulwark against Pakistan that has been very much emboldened by the United States? And remember, this is Richard Nixon's United States. Richard Nixon was one bad day away from just getting in bed with Yahya Khan and having booze while they order offensives on the front during the battle. Like, that's how close they were. And Russia was the only bulwark against that. Like, it's the reason India exists as it is today, and it's the reason that Bangladesh exists at all. The connection Svetlana made in India and the money she earned in the US by a string of successful publications would enable a hospital to be opened in Brijesh's village. Now, when Svetlana was older and her financial struggles more pronounced, the funding to the hospital stopped. At this point, it was converted into a school, still in Brijesh's name, and I think a communist like Brijesh would have loved that even more. So that was the life of the daughter of Joseph Stalin and the Indian communist who could change world history but were just settled for changing the love life of Stalin's daughter. So that's where we are. And as you have guessed from my meandering starting right now, I have not prepared an outro for this. So I think the next one is going to be particularly gruesome. So to prepare for that, go strangle a frog, torture a tortoise, and I don't know, drown a chicken or something. Bye.